Welcome to The Scoop. Our guest today is Pastor Liz. Pastor Liz, welcome.
Thank you very much.
You know, when people talk about, or people who know you, the first thing that comes to their minds is worship.
Yes.
How did it all begin?
Well, that's a long story to say in 5 minutes, but just from the time I was a young girl, singing in church, of course, got born again and started singing in CU choir in high school.
Yeah.
And it actually actively started in high school, but I've always been a very musical person from the time I was a young child. So of course, being in CU, then after Form 4, joining Faith Evangelistic Ministry, my local church back then, Donham All Nations Gospel Church Choir.
Yeah.
So of course we got into all these singing groups, and then we were told, actually that's the first time I heard what the phrase praise and worship.
Okay.
According to me, singing was worship. I mean, yeah, singing was equals to worship.
You know what, you bring up a very important point.
Yes.
Is singing not worship? Or let me ask it differently. Is worship not singing?
Is worship singing or is singing worship? You can worship and yet without even singing a song.
Okay.
And yet you can sing and not worship.
All right.
I'm thinking about John 4.
Yes.
The famous John 4, when Jesus told the Samaritan, the time is coming and now is when the true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. That's John 4:23.
Yeah.
But the Father is seeking such to worship him. When Jesus spoke this scripture, he was not singing to a group of singers on the road.
He was not speaking to a group of singers on the road.
Yes, it wasn't some waimbaji, a choir,
Who was he
a
referring
team. There was no choir, there was no pastor, there was no worship leader, there was
no
no
band.
band, there was no sound team, there was no crew.
Wow. Wow.
It was at a church setting. He was actually seated on the road at a well called Jacob's Well. If you look at John 4:4,
yes.
he is sitting at a well, sitting there deliberately waiting for a woman who was going to come there at about noon.
Yeah.
And in the process of conversing from her personal issues to religious issues,
Yes.
he ends up talking about the time is coming and now is when the true worshippers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. So that is the context in which that is mentioned. There is no choir. The first mention of worship in Genesis 22:5, God is talking to Abraham on the way to sacrifice Isaac.
Yes.
And so Isaac actually says in verse 5, when he tells his servant, stay here with the donkeys, the boy and I are going yonder to worship. That is the first mention of worship in the Bible, Genesis 22:5. Again, there's no choir, there's no worship team, there's no band, there's no pastor, there's no crew, there's no congregation. It's just God and a man, and then the man tells his servant, stay here, we are going to worship.
Yes.
So worship is primarily not about singing. Worship is primarily about relationship. And God is the initiator of worship. He tells Abraham, go to a place I will show you and offer your son. So God initiates it. And then how Abraham responded by obedience, God says around verse 14, Genesis 22:14, he told him, now I know that you fear or worship me because you've not withheld. So God related Abraham's obedience to offer his best as worship.
Wow.
And yet he had not sung any song.
Wow.
God related what the conversation, Jesus related the conversation he had with the Samaritan woman to worship, even though there was no singing.
There was no singing.
Yes, so those are some of the primary contexts in which we study this subject called worship.
Okay.
So worship is actually primarily about your relationship with God, how God reveals himself to you, and how you respond to that revelation. That is equals to worship.
Wow.
He will know through your obedience, through your attitude, through your thought patterns, through how you treat your wife, how you take care of your children, how you excellently do your work, how you excellently are faithful with what he has given you. He equates that to worship.
Wow. Excellent. Excellent.
Yes.
So Pastor Liz, are you telling me, the scripture says that we should make a joyful noise?
Yes.
Joyful noise.
Yes.
There are people who say, look, I really love worship, but, the noise I'm making is not as joyful as, it should be.
Yes.
Many times even people say, I do sing, I just sing in the bathroom or in the showers when I'm on my own.
Yes.
Are you saying that I can be a true worshiper without being able to sing?
Yes, you can, based on even just the scriptures we've read. Worship, there are so many scriptures in Psalms that says, sing to the Lord all the earth.
Yes.
Make a joyful noise to the Lord, shout,
Yes.
all you people.
Yes.
It doesn't limit it to singers.
Yes.
A true worshiper, in fact, there are more true worshippers in the congregations
Done
and
on stage.
out there
Oh
than
my.
the ones we see on stage.
Oh, wow.
The ones on stage, music is an expression of worship. The way you love your wife, we know you love your wife. You express your love to her, sometimes through gifts or words or physical touch or affirmations and the like.
Yeah.
Those are expressions. So music is an expression.
It's one of the expressions.
Yes, and so what we as lead worshipers do, we get music and we use it to help the people to worship God.
During worship, especially
Yes.
when you're leading people into worship,
Yes.
what are some of the most phenomenal things that you have seen during worship?
The effectiveness of any, now we are talking about congregational worship.
Yes,
Now we've brought it back to, let's say,
Under,
a local church
under one
setting.
roof, under one setting.
Under one roof, because there's also personal worship where
Yes.
it's you and God, but this is congregational worship. Some of the most phenomenal things is when the congregation is able to engage, get involved. Our generation has shifted responsibility to pastors and fivefold ministers and the singers. So we sit and you do everything for us. Sing for us. Sing to me. You've not sung my song. You've not preached my favorite scripture. So we have pushed it to those people on pulpit, and yet it's the responsibility of everyone to get involved. I get so blessed in times of congregational worship when the congregation sometimes sings and are even louder than us.
Yes.
They're able to participate,
Yes.
express themselves through clapping and shouting and singing and
Yes.
kneeling on the floor and crying and all the expressions. And giving. Giving is a very critical part of worship.
Pastor Liz,
Yes,
you
sir.
do Swahili songs to another level.
Even
Do one, an entire stanza right now.
oh, so many have come. Oh, you put me on the spot. Wewe, yes, oh my goodness. Wewe ndiwe Mungu ubadiliki, Rohi Baba yangu na kuabudu, uaminifu wako